You're listening to Monocle on Saturday, first broadcast on the 5th of October 2024 on Monocle Radio. Hello there, it's Emma Nelson broadcasting to you live from Midori House in London. This is Monocle on Saturday. Welcome. And coming up on today's programme, we'll have a look through the week's news and culture with Yossi Mekelberg, Associate Fellow Middle East and North Africa programme. Yossi, obviously huge developments in the Middle East, but what have you spotted in particular?
Good morning, Emma. I think we see that it's a very tense moment in the Middle East to see Israel retaliation to Iran's attack on a few days ago. We'll talk about the decision of Cabinet to let a debate in Parliament over assisted dying. The debate between the Vice President that was not as fierce as we expected it to be. It was actually duller than expected. Talk about the new Nintendo Museum, and we end with the Israeli movie that won the Israeli Academy and will represent the country in the Oscars.
It just so happens to be your brothers. Thank you for that, Yossi. And then coming up...
Reaching a height of 5 meters, the statue of Haavis Amanda stands on Helsinki's shore, near the market square, in one of the city's most prominent and visible locations.
Monocle's Petri Burtsoff there, telling the story of a recently restored icon of the Finnish capital. And then we'll explore the future of digital art with the global art network Lumen Studios. Lots to pack into Monocle on Saturday then, with me, Emma Nelson. And a very good morning to you, and good morning to you, Yossi. How are things? I mean, you have came back from Israel, 10 days ago?
Yeah.
And you just left Israel at the point when the pages had exploded, injuring, killing members of Hezbollah. And from that point on, you have gone just at the point when things really have escalated this week.
Yeah, I stayed a few more days after the pages, and just the night before the sirens for the first time went off in Tel Aviv, the first missile from Hezbollah that was aimed at the Tel Aviv area. And since then it escalated. And now we got to a point that a few days ago Iran attacked directly Israel with 181 ballistic missiles, which is a difference from what happened in April, that there were a combination of missiles and drones. And we are waiting now for Israel retaliation. In the strange way that the calendar works, it was the Jewish New Year over the last few days, just finished yesterday evening. So I think there was a bit of a respite in that, which might be a good thing, letting Israel rethink how it's going to retaliate. Now, Iran, of course, said that their attack was retaliation for the killing of Hassan Nasrallah and Ismail Haniyeh, the assassination in Tehran. Now the question is when the tit for tat is actually ending and everyone says we are quit, that's the time to stop it. But it doesn't seem the case, because if you believe what Israeli politicians said, senior one and military commander, there's going to be a retaliation, and a painful one. Then ask what? Now the 3 options to retaliate are either where the bases where these missiles were launched, the oil and gas installations, or the nuclear, if you want to escalate all the way. President Biden already said, advised not to hurt or to harm the nuclear or the oil and gas, because this is going to affect, of course, the United States. So the question is, what's next?
Well, what we have is conflict in so many different places now, where it is incredibly hard almost to keep track of what is going on. I mean, over the course of the week, we have had the Iranian ballistic missiles been sent towards Israel. We have operations in South Lebanon. And just looking, even the BBC's website this morning, the top story is, it's not easy to say, but Beirut is now a war zone. The fact that that word war is being used to describe what people are seeing and experiencing. Says you talk about the tit for tat there, but for those people on the ground experiencing it, it doesn't feel like tit for tat. This feels to many like an enormous change that's taken place this week.
There's no doubt about it. So many civilians have paid the price. We are nearly a year since October 7, and so many civilians have been killed. In Gaza, 41,000 people are killed, many of them. Some of them are obviously Hamas militant in Islamic Jihad, but many of them civilians, including children. So, and the same happens now in Lebanon. Israel is in a multi-front war right now. It's Gaza, it's Lebanon, it's the Houthis are firing. We forget the West Bank, but more than 700 people, Palestinians, have been killed, 37 Israelis, since October 7. So there is a multi-front conflict now. The question at what point you move from the military to the political. And Israel keep demonstrating, almost protesting too much, that it recovered militarily from the surprise of October 7. But does Israel have also a strategy to stop it and to translate it into any political achievement? I don't see that at the moment. And as you say, when Israel attacked in Beirut, in Dahya, this is this is the base of the Hezbollah, but at the same time there are many civilians there. When it bombs in the northeast, in the Bekaa region, there are many civilians, and we don't know exactly how many of them have been hurt. Right now, ground troops enter into the south. They're already there, and they call many civilians to leave. And you have, if I remember correctly, about 1.2 million displaced people. Many of them are trying to leave Lebanon to Cyprus. I just read on the way here that people are ready to pay $1,800 just for a yacht to take them to Cyprus. So the fear is real.
And we're seeing, I think I read reports earlier on this week that Lebanese people, I think there's 1 million people who are displaced in Lebanon now, and some of them are going to Syria. I mean, some of them are Syrian who had fled the broken country from following the civil war, had gone to Lebanon, and now find themselves going back the other way because it is safer. The
irony.
One wonders, and help us out with this one, is why has this all happened now? Because until there's the pager attack, the pager operation 10 days ago, the world was focused on Israel-Gaza, Israel-Hamas, the call to bring the hostages home, the operations, a humanitarian crisis, approaching a year-long anniversary, which is happening this weekend. And then suddenly the shift of focus has gone away from Gaza and gone to something which is far more far-reaching and has an enormous international level of repercussion to it.
You know, as we had this conversation exactly a year ago, on the eve of 7th of October, I probably will tell you that Gaza was long Israel's priorities. It was the West Bank that they moved troops from the Gaza area to the West Bank, fearing of an eruption, probably of a third intifada, and there was ongoing clashes with militants in the West Bank. And in the bigger strategic view, the Hezbollah was always a higher priority, because it was regarded as armed in a way that puts Israel's strategic well-being, if you like, at risk, and because it's an extension of Iran. And most of the weapons, missiles, up to 150,000 missiles and rockets in Lebanon. That now it looks different, but at the time, the assumption that they can target every point in Israel. At the beginning of the war, after 7th of October, some in the Israeli cabinet say we should concentrate. The minute that on the 8th of October that Hezbollah joined in with firing rockets into Israel, then say actually we should focus on Lebanon and Hezbollah because this is the bigger enemy there. Now, the thing, you mentioned the pager, the day before I visited the border between Israel and Lebanon and talking to, including commanders, the mayor of the biggest town there, that 22,000 out of the 24,000 are displaced in Israel. And after leaving this place, I had no doubt in my mind something is about to happen. I didn't expect the pager. This is more a James Bond sort of thing. But there's something about to happen because the feeling in Israel that by allowing Hezbollah to keep part of Israel empty and 60,000 people displaced is a strategic victory for Hezbollah that Israel can't afford, because it's also a strategic victory also for Iran. So they try to break it. Now there is question whether the issue of, for instance, the pager, did activate it because it was about to discover and everything roll on from there, or it was actually planned to be activated at this point in order to activate the plan. But the idea that bombing ground troops, it was there before for some time.
When you're in Israel, and you left obviously before the escalation took place last week, but when you're talking to friends and family, how are they positioned on this one? Do they feel as if Israel is on a war footing on every front, or what is the feeling, the appetite for this?
Not to try to be funny. Depends who's your family, who's your friend, or your friends. But the general feeling is of fatigue. It's already a year. It's the longest war since the War of Independence. Israel always wins war when it's short, the society is united, and there is the backing of the international community. It's not short for sure. The society was divided already before, because all the issue of the protest and the far-right government and demonstration against the judicial so-called reform. And by the way, the protests are back, just demanding for a ceasefire and a deal to see the hostages back. So the society is not. Now, then the issue of drafting the ultra-Orthodox, especially now that some of the young guys serving up to 300 days out of the 365 in reserves. So just imagine if you are a student, not much of an academic here. If you just started a business, or you have a business, it goes down the drain. Who is going to, let alone the economy? I walked actually in the old city in Jerusalem and talking to the traders, and basically it was empty. So there is also an economic side to that. And because of this debate in Israeli society, the most mobile are those from the high-tech, the intellectuals, those who can actually live. There are many that have dual citizenship. Many have European citizenship. So I'm not saying they're all of them. Some are living. But it's start enter into the conversation. What's the future holds for us here? So at the same time, saying that, a lot of the reservists do go and join when they are called, and we see that Israel managed to conduct this multi-front war for a while. And again, the question is for how long?
And when we look at this, and I know you wanted to draw our attention to an article in the New York Times from this morning. His headline is, "After missile attack, Israel may be ready to risk all-out war with Iran." It says, for years, Israel and Iran have avoided direct confrontation as Israel secretly sabotaged Tehran's interests. But now the two countries seem prepared to risk a direct, prolonged and extraordinarily costly conflict. I mean, what you've just mentioned there is an acceptance generally by Israelis that if you have to have some sort of military action, some sort of conflict, it has to be short, because that's where Israel succeeds. But when we look at this, and there is that change in attitude from the Israeli government, which is, we go to war now. I mean, what's the reaction among Israelis there? Because is there any desire for that to happen?
I think it's very confused, because I think there is more unity when it comes to Lebanon, because Israel says, why Hezbollah joined the war at all? There is no dispute over the border between, there is a very tiny place, the Shaba farm, that Israel doesn't even claim ownership. It's between Syria and Lebanon, but Israel holds it, but it's tiny. For everyone understand, for Hezbollah, Israel is an excuse. It's not a real target. It's different when it comes to Gaza and the Palestinian issue, which really divides the society. There is a government that is discredited by many, but elections are 2 years away. So in this kind of situation, you find confusing answers. What I agree with this article in the New York Times, because there is a real risk. Israel is this kind of idea, and Naftali Bennett said it in a Twitter. He was the prime minister, he's a former prime minister. There is the theory of the octopus, which Iran is the head, and the Houthis and the Hezbollah and the militias in Iraq and Hamas are the tentacles. And there was a sense that Israel is dealing only with the tentacle, but doesn't deal with the head. And now there is an opportunity, as Bennett said it, to reshape the Middle East by dealing with the head. I think it's a very, very dangerous approach. My fear that someone in the Israeli government think, whenever it goes wrong, the United States and the UK and France and even Jordan come to our help. So if we go through such a daring move, even if it goes right, but definitely if it goes wrong, the United States won't leave us on our own and will and come to our rescue, and then we deal with the Iran nuclear and other issues.
Let's leave Israel and the situation for a while and turn to a couple of other stories that you wanted to bring our attention to. Yossi, there was something in The Guardian, a story that's sort of bubbled up in the last couple of days, which is the issue of assisted dying. It's not a very sort of positive and sort of constructive list of headlines that's coming on any of the papers today. Everything does seems to be pointed in.
It will get better.
Well, one day it will have to. Humans have to get us out of this. But the fact is now that there is an open discussion now about assisted dying in the UK.
And I think it's important to have this discussion. And I must admit, when I read it, I thought about my mother-in-law that passed away a few months ago and suffered from dementia. And towards, nearly a year ago, Christmas, we went to see her for the last time, and someone that was very bubbly, heart and soul of the family, and see her in her dying days in a home, that you need to feed her, and she barely aware of anything. And I read it, and I know she expressed during her life that if she ever be in this situation, she doesn't want to live, that someone. But in the United States, where she lived, there is no assisted dying, or it's against the law. So you just wait and see someone basically willing away. And I think we should have a discussion about it. And there are a lot of moral and practical hazards on the way. Especially when it's not only about the assisted dying, it's the assisting, it's the care to people that are dying, which is getting worse and worse. There is not enough funds, there are not enough places. You see, we are aging population, issues of dementia, Alzheimer is more prevalent. And at the same time, we haven't adjusted to this with the funds that are needed and we care. And people are expressing many times, we don't want to live like this. And some will actually go to Switzerland with dignitas and just bring an end to their suffering. But the danger, do they do it because they are guilty, they don't want to be a burden? Are they going to be encouraged because hospitals are full? There are a lot of moral, religious and practical issues involved.
There is that issue, isn't there, that's being debated at the moment, is how much pressure an individual may find themselves in. And there's a couple of quite prominent British campaigners. One of them is a celebrity in the UK called Esther Rantzen, had been and has been almost the sort of the godmother of the United Kingdom in terms of she had a television programme for years and years and years in the UK where they did things to help people. It was a sort of a community swap shop on national television. And as a result, she has become a rather untouchable and wonderful figure. She has terminal cancer. She is pushing for an assisted dying bill to go through. But there's been a huge argument saying if you are privileged, if you are strong-willed, if you have your own sense of self, then you can resist pressure. But how many people will find themselves in that position? And when they might find themselves in, as you say, pressure, not just from families, but from the fact that social services and the infrastructure that remains in the United Kingdom might not allow you to make a decision which is entirely yours.
Almost emotionally blackmailed to do that. And not everyone is Esther Rantzen.
I wish we all were Esther Rantzen. I think we'd be fine.
She's a strong character, and as you mentioned, that's life in the program that, make her very well known. But, in a conversation when Prime Minister Starmer was in opposition, he promised her at the time that should he be elected as Prime Minister, at least he will allow a debate in Parliament. He won't block a debate in Parliament. And here is an opportunity to deal something, because it's also about our humanity, how we deal with life and death. Because we are not very good in that. We manage to extend life expectancy longer and longer, but not necessarily the quality of life. But with this really lies the danger that, we just discussed. At what point, when we are all healthy and in good shape, say we'll never want to be in this situation, just bring it to an end because we don't want to be like that. But the question when we are in this point...
When you have control, it's easy.
Yeah, but when you lose this control, what are your considerations there, and how clear-minded you are to actually to make this kind of decision, looking at the stress that it causes the people around you, sometimes even the cost that it causes, and exhaust resources. So, I think the good thing about that there's going to be a debate with. And maybe it will take some of the biases and prejudices about it, and we can have on something so important, a genuine debate.
Yossi, stay with us. We're going to change our direction now and head to Finland, because standing in one of the most central locations in Helsinki, between the Esplanadi Park and the Market Square, lives a statue that's very dear to the Finns. This monument has become so associated with Finnish success that it's a place for sporting victory celebrations, from javelin gold medals to ice hockey championships. Well, Monocle's Petri Burtsoff tells the story of the Haavis Amanda sculpture and fountain in Helsinki now.
Reaching a height of 5 meters, the statue of Haavis Amanda stands on Helsinki's shore, near the Market Square, in one of the city's most prominent and visible locations. It depicts a mermaid risen from the sea, casting a furtive glance over her shoulder in a gesture of bidding farewell to the sea before starting a new life on land. She stands on a platform of seaweed, surrounded by 4 majestic sea lions, guarding the fountain in the middle of which the statue rises. Haavis Amanda is hardly a tourist magnet, but for the locals it is one of Helsinki's most recognized landmarks. On 30th of April each year, tens of thousands of people gather to witness a cherished ritual in which the university students place a white student hat on the statue's head, thus marking the official beginning of the 1st of May celebrations. The event is broadcast live on national television. Haavis Amanda also takes center stage if Finland manages to win a major international trophy, say in ice hockey or the Eurovision Song Contest. That is when the revelers jump into the statue's fountain and climb on top of her to give her a hug. But Haavis Amanda has not always enjoyed this level of popularity. It was subject to controversy already when commissioned. In 1908, Finland was still under Russian rule and would have to wait almost a decade before she first gained independence. Helsinki's Swedish-speaking liberal elite wanted the statue to reflect the city's ambitions to become a cosmopolitan and liberal city with a distinctly Western and European identity. That's why they commissioned a Swedish-speaking sculptor, Ville Wallgren, who had spent most of his career in Paris and was heavily influenced by the French Art Nouveau style. Wallgren modeled the statue after 2 Parisian women, and its subtle elegance has a distinctly French feel, especially when compared with much of the Finnish art of the period, which was influenced by the birth of Finnish nationalism and artistic vernacular. The so-called Fennomans, whose goal was to emphasize the nascent Finnish identity, saw Wallgren's work as too French, which was not too far off the mark. In fact, before being shipped from France to Finland, Haavis Amanda was on display in the revered Salon de Paris and loved by the French critics. There was even talk of placing the statue on the Champs-Élysées. In 1908, the reaction was divided, to say the least. It drew strong criticism from women's groups in particular, who deemed its nudity and seductiveness inappropriate, and the fact that the statue was placed on a high pedestal was seen as sexually objectifying women in society. Wallgren himself saw the mermaid risen from the sea, empowered by the waves, as a symbol of the rebirth of Helsinki, a city surrounded by the Baltic Sea. But it didn't take long for the citizens to fall in love with Haavis Amanda. and for it to become one of the city's landmarks. When Helsinki was bombed in the Second World War, authorities took great care to protect the statue from damage. Being a center of attention for 116 years has taken a toll on the bronze mermaid. The city of Helsinki's decision in 2019 to place a protective barrier around the statue in times of celebration in order to prevent damage caused major uproar. Following a 16-month restoration, in which the statue was removed from her pedestal, cleaned and reinforced, she was re-erected in August to much fanfare, underscoring her importance to the Finnish capital. After a speech from the mayor, the celebrations finished off with an ode to Haavis Amanda, sung in French, of course.
Amanda,
that was Petri Burtsoff from Helsinki. You can hear more episodes of Tall Stories, which is where that lovely report has been filed, on our website at monocle.com/radio. The time here in London is 9:26. You're listening to Monocle on Saturday with me, Emma Nelson. We stay with art now, the world of digital art in particular, because the Lumen Prize celebrates this particular cultural sector. After 2,000 applications from more than 60 countries, the winner of this year's Lumen Prize will be announced on Wednesday. To tell us more, I'm delighted to say, is the CEO of Lumen Studios, Jen Roebuck, and the director of the Lumen Prize, Gillian Varney. A very good morning to you. Welcome to Monocle on Saturday.
Good morning.
Hi there. Thanks for having us.
Let us start with you, Jen. And just for those of us, just for a little bit of clarification, how would you classify digital art?
We look at digital art as actually a segment of art where artists use technology as their canvas. So it's really the technology that's the important aspect.
And in what way does that materialise in the? If you could give us an example of how that manifests itself, where we could see examples of digital art.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll see that with the likes of Rafiq Anadol. He uses AI and code to create visuals on screens. You can see it through haptic technologies, which is a texture-based fabrication that allows people to feel and pass information to fabric. You'll see it in light and sound. So there's many examples.
So let's talk a little bit now, Gillian, about what the Lumen Prize is aiming to do, because clearly we have a phenomenally exciting part of the art world here.
Absolutely. Our ultimate goal is to really bring this form of creativity, which has previously been less mainstream, and bring it to the wider public and make this really a critical part of the art history canon.
And so just explain to us how you go about sort of pulling together the Lumen Prize. It's been about for about 12 years now, hasn't it? And there are an awful lot of applications. I mean, a good 2,000. What are you looking for when your 2,000 applications arrive?
Well, it's certainly a process. We bring together some of the best minds in the space. We really seek to form a brain trust in bringing together academics, those who represent the very best museums in the world, specialists from galleries, from auction houses. And over a series of months, they review the applications that we receive against the criteria of the categories we put together every year. And they slowly but surely trim down the very best in each category to identify the top 70, to then put them forward to our jury panel, who come from institutions like the Whitney, the V&A, and M+ in Hong Kong.
And what are you looking for, Gillian? Because when you consider art, and you sort of try, we're going to get a bit arch here, but when you look at what the purpose of art is, which is sort of enrich life, explain life, offer a different perspective on our own worlds, how does the addition of the digital nature actually change that and create something new?
Well, I think if anything, digital art really complicates the very notion of the artist's hand, because they're integrating technology into their practice in a way that is often so seamless that it's so inspiring to see where the artist hand ends and where technology begins. And so it's really about understanding, how are these artists using technology at the very height of what's possible and integrating it into their practice. And that's what we look for, really, technological sophistication and the creative vision behind the concept.
So Jen, just build a little bit more on that. You have what Gillian has described there as the technical sophistication, but you have ultimately a very human practice here, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one example would be there's a rising trend in AI-enabled photography. And AI has been, a very controversial topic in the world of art, because some would suggest that AI does not allow you to create art, and some would suggest that AI is a tool to create art. But ultimately, the artists that we see in that particular medium wouldn't be able to produce if they didn't have the ideas in the first place. And so AI is basically their delivery system.
And do you ever find, Jen, the pushback because of that enormous continued debate about AI and the role that it plays in our lives in terms of how much we are in control and how much AI just seems to be getting on with things for us? Do people ever criticise it, or is it now just an accepted part that it is like like a different kind of paintbrush?
Well, they completely they criticize it all the time. I mean,
right.
I think that, I don't think this debate has been solved. And it's fascinating to bring two groups together and have that discussion.
And what is generally discussed there, and what is generally the result of that discussion?
Well, I don't think there is a result. I would say that because AI is, the generative AI models are, hoovering up all of the content on the internet and any other archives they can get their hands on. Really, the core of the debate is the artist influencing the output, or are the contents influencing the output? And how much of the manipulation coming from the artist is really what's driving the art? And it feels like a little bit of a circular argument at the moment. But I can certainly see examples where, and having personally met some of these artists along with Gillian, I know for a fact that the ideas that I'm seeing coming out in a photography render and or moving image does not exist today in any archive.
Jen Roebuck and Gillian Varney, thank you so much for joining us on Monocle Radio. You're with Monocle on Saturday with me, Emma Nelson, and Yossi Mekelberg. Finally, let's turn to a much more traditional art form, but one of which you're rather proud. Tell us about your brother, Yossi, and what he does.
My brother Chaim is a film producer. And now, in recent years, he produces together with his wife, Esti, and now their son. My nephew joined as well. And recently, they won the Israeli Academy with a movie, very interesting one, not easy to watch necessarily, but worth watching, which is called Come Closer, which dealing with actually losing a sibling. And the director and the scriptwriter is very young. She's 27. And she lost her brother in a scooter accident a few years ago. She comes from a family of filmmakers. Her father is a famous director in Israel, Avi Nesher, and she Tom Nesher. And they did something, I think, very special to deal with that. It puts you out of your comfort zone. But I think it's won for the best movie, the best director, best editing, the best actress. So we'll see if it's reached the Oscars, but...
Just tell us what was in the water and what were you being fed in the Mekelberg household as you were growing up? Because we obviously have one of the world's leading international geopolitical brains sitting in the studio with us, and now we have an award-winning filmmaker. I mean, when you're growing up together with you and your brother, you're clearly pretty bright. What's it like when you sort of find each other, when you find your métier, or Mr. and Mrs. Mekelberg are thinking, what did you do? I mean, parenting tips are massively welcome here.
That's very kind of you to say. But actually, we are working class. We grew up in three brothers in a two-bedroom flat in a town just adjacent to Tel Aviv. But education was very important. I'm actually so proud of my brother because we don't have either background in film making or money to sponsor film. So it was his dream for a very young age, and he works through this. This is actually the fourth time that he wins the Academy. 3 features and 1 documentary. And I think if there is anything, education was always top priority. And the other thing, working hard, and don't assume we're entitled to anything, but you wake up in the morning and you try to do your best. And one of the things to do films in Israel, you can win all these prizes, but there's not a lot of money. It's not a James Bond or Harry Potter that you can spend the rest of your life doing nothing if you like. It's you live from movie to movie, but so every time that you such a great achievement in taking it from the production and see it in fruition is a great moment and pride to all of us.
And your brother's film is called Come Closer.
Come Closer.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Yossi, for joining me in the studio. And thanks also to all my guests this morning. Thanks to our producer and studio and engineer, Mariella Bevan. And Monocle on Saturday returns next weekend. Monocle on Sunday is with us tomorrow. I'll be there for that as well. But for now, from me, Emma Nelson, goodbye. Thank you very much for listening.